Okay, now I can lay it out pretty clear. In the year 2034, if you're going to look back and be like, wow, how did games change over the last 10 years? The big thing is going to be AI. We are going to look back and we're going to be like, wow, games before AI, that was so different. That's going to be the biggest one. The presence of intelligent characters in games is going to radically change the nature of games.
That was Jesse Schell with some thoughts about AI. We talked to a lot of people about AI, and
it's the talk of the town.
Well, he straddles academia and
Dude,
game studio. He was an Imagineer. He worked in AI. So he's got some pretty interesting thoughts. Can't wait for you to hear those when we get to the interview. What a great conversation.
You ever meet people who just get you excited about something? You know, like you know, he gets me excited about making games. Like, just, I don't know what it is. He's got some energy flowing through his vibe that I was like.
He grew up as a performer. Not going to spoil nothing, but
Alex, hold it back.
So much about his history I had no idea about. What's happening with you? You had your own run-in with some
AI.
Some AI, huh? What
story time.
All right. Listener, I got this text yesterday with like a couple of screenshots and like a diatribe about what's really happening on the internet.
I think it's real.
From our friend Aaron here. Unpack, please.
Conspiracy Camp, lesson 12. Yesterday, I went to Nintendo.com for some game to see if they're selling some game. I just got a rally game. Can't remember what it's called. I haven't played it yet. It's like a top-down game. Anyways, I went back to Nintendo to see if this other game was on sale. And I clicked on their like exclusive items. And there's a really cool Wario. No, it said look by character. So I clicked like the villains button. And this really cool Wario cap comes up. And I'm like, man, that's a really cool cap. So I added it to my cart.
So is this like a virtual hat, or is this like
No, this is real. This is merch. Like you could buy, the Nintendo store lets you buy digital games, physical games, amiibos,
and then physical merch,
and random physical merch. Like,
were you really gonna get yourself a Wario hat?
Yeah, it's yellow. It's like he's my favorite Nintendo character. Wario. He's like the best. He's so funny. I love the WarioWare games, especially the original one. The very first one's one of my favorite.
WarioWare was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the very first.
All right.
So I added to my cart, and it's like, we're so busy. So I'm like, you know what? I'll look at this later. So I close the tab, get to work, and I finish everything. And I'm like, I'm going to watch a little YouTube, just kind of chillax, crack open a brew, and just, live my best life. And I get this video suggested to me that is so random and not something I would normally watch, or maybe I would, but it's Skyline Chili. Do you know what Skyline Chili is?
Oh, that sounds familiar.
If there's any listeners out there, like if you know what Skyline Chili is, it's like by Cleveland, I think. So there's a thing called Cleveland spaghetti. Have you ever had that before?
No.
So this restaurant specializes in chili, and specifically the Cleveland spaghetti. And it's like spaghetti pasta noodles, and then you put chili on top and like yellow cheese and onions, and that's it. And I actually made it once, and it's flippin' delicious. It's like amazing. It's just carbs and chili.
How important is this part to the story?
Because I would never watch this. Because this guy eats Skyline Chili 3 meals a day for a week. And I'm like, what is
this video?
So yeah, watching the video. And I noticed the guy in the video is wearing the Wario hat.
What?
So I was even more compelled to go buy the hat. And I'm thinking, wait a second. They know what I'm clicking on. They know my cookies. And by they, I mean the AI. And think about it. Imagine if this is the kind of stuff you could sell your advertisers. Like this level of targeted, like you're looking at a purse. I got, a purse or some shoes or a jacket. You're like, man, that jacket's so cool. And then the AI scrapes every YouTube video, finds a video that you might potentially want to watch because it can filter. It already kind of knows your preferences, your political leaning, your religion, all that stuff. And then it finds that piece of content that has that jacket in there. Like someone in the video is wearing that jacket. You're going to want to buy it because it's like you see other people that have it, and it kind of, you know what I'm saying? Kind of tips the scales.
I suppose that's technically possible. Do you think that's actually happening?
I believe it is, and I was
It'd
at
be nice
the
to hear
test.
from somebody who knows whether the data scraping algorithms and platforms are that sophisticated that it can actually serve you content
Yes,
that has
I think it is.
specific bits,
Oh yeah,
yeah, or whether
I
that was just
believe it is.
coincidence.
No, the coincidence did not occur. I believe it is real, and I was a victim.
You've been talking about this kind of stuff for a while, and I used to think you were full of it, but recently I was having a conversation, I think, with Laura about something. I can't even remember what it was, but it showed up in my Insta feed, and I couldn't explain the coincidence away.
Yeah.
I was like,
Dude, I'm telling you, it's
creepy.
real, and it's going to get even more sophisticated. I mean, if anything, either I'm a genius that just came up with this, or I'm noticing the pattern, which also makes me a hyper
If
AI
it doesn't
genius.
exist, then perhaps that is something that an advertiser would like to have exist. I don't know. Yeah, there's a bunch of things that we have or are going to have that nobody really wants except for the people making them because it'll make them more money. I experienced this with the Waymo taxi in San Francisco. I saw one for the first time and it kind of spooked me.
Yeah, what's interesting is whenever one would pull up at the stoplight, everyone would stare, and the people in the Waymo would like laugh because like they were famous. They're like, "Oh, what's going on? It's a ghost car."
There's no ghost car going by with no driver, and I'm like, I don't want to ride in it. I don't. Why do we have this? Who wants it? Who asked for this? Who asked for it? The only people who asked for it were the investors funding the company that was going to get richer because they don't have to pay drivers, which seems bad for drivers. I don't know. Maybe these cars will be safer.
But drivers could then turn into Waymo repair technicians.
That seems like a rationalization. I don't know.
I don't know. When I saw it take the turn, I was like, whoa, that was a good turn. It was going fast. It went like 20. I'm like, whoa, they're not going slow. It looked like a person was driving it. It was pretty impressive.
Well, they're coming to LA, so look out, everybody. If you want to be I don't know, riding around in a driverless car and you live in LA, you'll have your chance soon.
Are you afraid of AI? Like seriously? Seriously.
Right now, no. But I think we all should be very careful with how we use this technology. Absolutely. Honestly, it's not like how we use this technology. It's like how this technology is protected and securitized against malfeasance. Because like anything in this world, if you make something, there's some bastard out there that would like to use it for the wrong reasons, and AI has a potential to be used for not good.
Are you going to get a robot in your house? You think you'll get to live that? I'm serious.
I have a bunch. I got a robot vacuum cleaner.
Nah, that's not a robot. That's like a roach.
What's the line for you? What makes it a real robot? Does it have to be able to like pick things up? What is?
So for me, it would be
if I glued my Alexa to the vacuum cleaner. Is that a robot now?
No, I mean more like. So when I was a kid, I used to have a lot of robots. I even had like the big one from like Rocky. Like I think my parents got it for me for my birthday or something. But and I always thought the robot was alive, but it's really a remote control, and you talk through the remote control, and that ruined it for me, because it's like you pretending to. Okay, so, but what I would make the robot do was I'd make it like walk into the kitchen and go, "Hello, Mom and Dad, can you please make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?" And I would talk, and then they would like put the sandwich on the thing, and then I'd have like drive it out and it'd come back. So what I'm thinking is a robot that you could go kind of like you talk to Siri now, but it now has the Chat GPT AI like ability to communicate with you. It has a personality, and you say, "Hey, I need you to go get the mail and get the dinner going, and I want a steak tonight, and I'd like some Chinese. There are no noodles. We'll get some noodles. Like figure it out." And then like the robot starts making dinner. It places an order. You know what I'm saying? Like this little flying robot. You know what I'm saying?
Rewind just a little second.
And it doesn't kill you.
But you asked for a steak and Chinese food.
Yeah, in this illusion,
you just killed yourself there. What are you doing? I thought you're vegetarian now. What's happening?
Not when the robots are around. You can kind of let yourself go.
All right. Well, we'll talk more about that after the conversation with Jesse. I hope you enjoy it. It's a really good one.
Very inspirational and fun.
Welcome to the program, friends. Today, we have Jesse Schell with us. Jesse got his start as a freaking Imagineer at Disney. Is that right?
It's all true.
That is, yeah. I mean,
we just got started.
I know. I think that's the coolest job title ever. And for the last 20 plus years, like, talk about commitment, has been professor of entertainment technology at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and also the founder CEO of namesake company Schell Games.
Yeah.
Where I think you're just releasing a game. Is that right? Is Among Us VR coming out?
Oh, well, so Among Us VR has been out for about a year, but we're always popping out new updates and versions on that. But a little later this year in the summer, we're going to have Silent Slayer, Vaults of the Vampire coming out on for VR platforms as well.
Right on, right on. He's also the author of The Art of Game Design. Hey, Jesse, how you doing? Welcome to the show. Great to see you.
One more credit. The Midway, Toy Story Midway, the ride.
I can't say whether I worked on that or not.
Rumor has it.
Really?
I can make no comment about that.
We start with the conspiracy theories.
What was it like being at Disney Imagineering?
Oh, Disney Imagineering is an incredible place. I mean, it has such a legacy. It really stays true to its history. You know, Walt created this place to try and just do a kind of theme park development that nobody had ever done before. And so it brings together people who are just absolutely best in their craft in every possible craft in the world. And so it's just a remarkable place to be. I was there for 7 years and just got such a tremendous education about what makes for excellent theme parks, what makes for excellent entertainment in general. And just, I was always continuously astonished by the quality of everybody's craft, all the artists, all the engineers, all the writers, all the designers, even the business people. I mean, it's an incredibly special place.
Did they ever send you out into the park in costume?
They have programs for that for some kinds of managers, managers who are coming in and trying to kind of get a crash course in like what the parks are really about.
Yeah.
I never went through kind of that training, but I didn't feel like I missed much because, you know, I used to work in amusement parks. Like I kind of came from a circus background, and I'd spent a lot of time inside those costumes already. Not at Disney parks, but at other parks. So
wait, circus background. Let's hear this.
Maybe this is where it all starts.
Well, because I was going to say, I think you would be a goofy. I think I didn't get to do those management classes either. But
is it like a humiliation? What is it about? Is it like a humiliation?
No, it's like immersion. You go in and interact with the guests, but I think they do the costumes by height, and I think you're probably a goofy height.
Okay.
So that's a compliment. I wouldn't reach that high.
I could maybe pull that off. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, no, I mean the reason they do it is because there are not a lot of entertainment experiences where you get to hug your guest, right? If you want to get to know your customer and what's important to them and what do they value, spending some time inside that costume and looking them right in the eye and understanding like why they're really here. I mean, there's something really important and magic to it. And I think it's one of the things that I think is sort of special and unique about the Disney parks that way. So yeah, so I get why they make that a priority for people who are trying to understand and connect with the guests.
Alex and I would probably be one of the 7 dwarfs.
Speak for yourself, man.
Together?
Together, yeah, Alex.
They'd ask me to be Gaston, no costume required, just pull out the guns and let's...
What?
Probably grumpy over here.
The people who do the Gaston performance, like it is
fantastic.
It is hilarious. They are so funny.
Okay, so circus background, but this sounds interesting.
When I was younger, I'd started out as juggling as a hobby, and then I kind of went professional with it. I worked my way through high school and college, working with different circus troupes and worked at amusement parks in the summers, that kind of thing, doing shows. I got a huge education this way because not only did my juggling get really good, but I was in show troupes so I learned all this kind of stage stuff. I learned a lot of, I don't know, like you had to do everything. Like we had to do puppet shows and helped out with the magic show and there were, I don't know, it was hosted a live game show. So it was a great education working with clowns and magicians and dancers. And for me, that was really just kind of entry into that circus world. That was, I learned a lot.
And how old were you?
I started professional, like, I don't know, 15, 16, and did that probably for about 10 years, I guess, something like that. Yeah.
That's amazing. How does that happen? Is that like you kind of started, somebody gave you like juggling for klutzes for Christmas one year and you
Summer
started
job.
and you got really good, or was there something that inspired you? Like what got you into that?
It was sort of bit by bit. It was something I'd always been juggling had always kind of captivated me as, even when I was young, I would try and do it, didn't really know what I was doing. And one year for Christmas, I got some little juggling kit and I practiced with it a bit. And I don't know, there was something in school where there was a deadline because, the magic of deadlines there, you had to do a little, like I was 8th grade, like, everybody had to kind of do an oral report about a hobby you had. And I'm like, I want to get good enough about this that I can actually show it. And so like, that was a deadline that kind of moved me to actually do it. And then I kept doing it as a hobby. And when I was in high school, I'd heard about a couple kids in the school who were jugglers at the park. And we lived near a park that is now, I guess, Six Flags New England. It used to be called Riverside Park. And I heard that they were doing that. And I asked them about it. And they were like, oh, yeah, that's a thing. You could apply. And so I went to, I remember my mom taking me to go and fill out the form. I go and pick up the form. They say, take it home and mail it in. And I remember being so disappointed because I've got this form and you're supposed to check a box about what department you're in. Is it going to be, is it going to be rides or games or food service or janitorial? And there was nothing for shows or performance. And I was so disappointed. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'll just do the like carnival games thing. And my mother was there and she's like, no, here's what you're going to do. What you're going to do is you're going to not fill out any of those boxes. You're going to write a letter explaining what you want to do and then fill out the rest of the form and just send that all in together. I was like, oh, okay. And she was absolutely right. They called me up and
Mother knows best.
Yeah, no, she's like, you need to follow the rules. You do what you need to do. And they called me up for an audition and it was very exciting because they were like, yeah, bring your stuff and come in for an audition. I had no idea what that meant. So I just show up with all my props and, the head of the troupe, who was a professional magician, kind of meets me at the gate. He's kind of, I don't know, looks kind of skeptical. And he's like, I don't know. All right, follow me. And we walk out and then we were in the middle of the park. There's people everywhere. And he says, see right there, there's the puppet tower. I'm like, yeah. He says, there's going to be a show there in 10 minutes. Draw a crowd. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we're doing this. Yeah. So I started
awesome.
Juggling, doing a little bit of tricks and stuff. And, a couple people are stopping. And he's kind of, you could tell he's not super impressed. But I could tell the moment I won him over. I pull out of my bag 2 big plastic eggs and a rubber chicken. And I make like I'm going to juggle them, but I'm not juggling them. I'm just kind of like about to and about to and about to and about to. And he says, is something wrong? What's the problem? I said, I don't know which comes first.
Yeah.
And I could tell he kind of broke at that point, and I think I won him over. But that was great. I worked there for a couple of years and learned a ton. In my book, actually, I talk about him. I learned about interest curves through him. There's a couple stories I tell that about how to structure good entertainment.
Oh, that's super cool. I was going to ask, so like, yeah, being in front of a live audience and performing and thinking on your feet and all of that, I imagine has probably been very useful for you in
Oh
your career
yeah.
as a designer, as a maker, and as a professor too, I would imagine.
Yeah. No, I think it's true in all those ways. Certainly that ability, because like when you work live entertainment, there's an energy that goes back and forth with the crowd, and you're always trying to hold them and surprise them and delight them and figure out what's working, what's not. And when you do it right, there's this real energy that goes back and forth. And it's the same thing teaching, doing lectures,
Mm-hmm.
like that liveness matters. It's one thing that drove me nuts in the pandemic was having to do like lectures online. Like the energy exchange is just not the same. It's much harder
Yeah.
for that reason. But yeah, no, it helped there. And then a place that really helps in game development, it wasn't obvious to me right away, is when you play test. When I first started going to play tests, I noticed, the other people on the team often would be watching the screen of like what the player was doing. And I found I was almost never watching the screen. I was like watching the players themselves and realizing like, oh yeah, all the same things I learned about all those little micro expressions about, oh, I'm frustrated, I'm bored, I'm tired, I'm excited, et cetera, like that ability to read the audience, like it absolutely translates into game development.
Yeah. Yeah. You could totally read like engagement and anticipation on somebody's face, the body language.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting thought.
During this time, are you playing games? Are you making games, or are you solely focused on the circus life?
Oh yeah, this is a great question. Yeah, so because there was a lot of stuff in parallel for me. Like I started making video games when I was maybe 12 years old. It was old days. Atari 800 XL was was the computer I had, and so I like as a hobby, I liked programming and making games especially, which was very challenging. Back then, no internet, no very little guidance. You had to kind of you're working from library books and magazines and things you heard. Like it was it was challenging, but I never really thought going into games could be a realistic career for me. I was growing up in the Northeast, living in New Jersey, Massachusetts, and I went to college at Rensselaer in New York State. I mean, I'm going to school for computer science. I didn't know anybody going into games. I didn't know anybody who knew anybody going into games. It just didn't seem realistic. So I thought about doing performance full time. Could that be a career for me? But I'm like, man, it's tough. You got to travel all the time, and I wanted to eat 3 meals a day, and I wasn't sure I was going to do that doing the circus life. And so I'm like, but I like the engineering stuff. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna focus on computer science. At the time, I was very focused on AI. That was my big undergraduate focus, and kind of games was sort of like, oh, that's a hobby, something I'm kind of paying attention to, and then doing the circus stuff sort of on the side. So my path into the industry was kind of strange. I graduate from college, and when I'm interviewing for jobs, I ask every company like, hey, you send anybody to grad school? Because I'd heard that there were some companies back then that sent people to grad school. And I want to go to grad school for AI, but I didn't think I could pay for it. I didn't think I could afford it. And so I was just asking everybody, and everybody's like, no, are you crazy? But one company, which was Bell Communications Research, they said, well, we used to do that. We don't do it anymore. Well, there's this one program. There's one program about computer networking, the Information Networking Institute. We do send people there to Carnegie Mellon. And I was like, computer networking, blah. Like, because it was like, what, 93, I guess? There's no web. Like, computer networking was like, you had to really be into packets, you know what I'm saying? And I'm thinking, nah, I don't want to do that. So when I had to think about things, I'd always go play pinball. So I'm go off playing a game of pinball and thinking, it's a nice opportunity, but I don't want to do that. And then, well, what do I want to do? I thought, because I thought I was going to pursue the AI thing, but AI was looking more and more like it just wasn't ready. And looking back, it wasn't. But I'm playing pinball. I'm like, what I'd really like to do? I'd love to make stuff like this pinball machine. This is really cool. And how would I do that? I'm thinking, well, what is a pinball machine? It's got a bunch of sensors, and then the sensors send messages to, God damn it, it's computer networking. And so I realized, like, okay, I could do stuff with this. So I said yes to this program. So I started working at Bell Communications Research. They send me to Carnegie Mellon, and I see there are people here working on virtual reality. I'd seen it was like this. What most people were not. Most people working on like the future of cell phones or whatever. But this one team was doing network virtual reality, and I reached out and like, hey, do you need a new team doing that? And they said, oh yeah, definitely. And I said, well, why? And the guy in charge of it's like, I'm building the Networked Virtual Reality Art Museum. And I said, wow, what does that mean? He's like, I don't know. That's why I need help. Okay. All right, cool. And so, yeah, so I did this thesis all about what are the best, I was a group thesis. It was a few of us. We did, what are the best network architectures for massively multiplayer virtual reality games? And we did that in 1993, right? So it was a little early days, but that was when I started getting involved in VR and all that. And so did that. Thesis was fascinating. We actually put an exhibit in the Guggenheim, if you can believe it. And then all that's done, and I'm back working basically at the phone company, working on graphical network maps, and thinking, I don't know if I can stay here forever. I worked there maybe a year and a half, and then I see an opportunity at the Disney Virtual Reality Lab, the Disney Virtual Reality Studio. And what are they looking for? They're looking for somebody who, hey, we need someone who knew how to do AI programming. I'm like, yes. And someone who's worked with virtual reality, yes. Someone who has experience with theme parks. I'm like, yeah, I worked in that for years. and someone who knows how to do sound design. I'm like, oh yeah, I did college radio for like 3-4 years. Yeah, sure. So I applied, and they're like, oh yeah, you're the right person for this. And so
you are the unicorn.
That's like
You're the
one.
it was weird. I'm reading this thing. It's like, this is exactly all the weird things that I've been doing. And so, yeah, my wife and I moved out to LA, and it was phenomenal. It was a huge education for me. And it was crazy because then at that point, I'm technically in the game industry, but it was weird because we were so far ahead of what other people were doing. By that point, it's 1995, and we're working on these, $300,000 computers with characters with like 8,000 polygons and like 8 times super sampling, and like, for the rest of the game industry, like, oh my God, the PlayStation 1, it's like this big deal. And we're like, okay, yeah, that's nice. But I mean, this was stuff that was more like PlayStation 2 or 3 level graphics, but just kind of 10 years ahead.
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful education.
That's amazing. So was this part of Disney Imagineering, like over in Glendale and Flower Street over in that building?
Yep. This was a lab. Yeah, we were in the Flower Street complex. I guess initially we were in an old building called the Bowling Alley because it used to be a bowling alley. And
that's cool.
Yeah, we built a thing called Disney Quest, which was Disney's virtual reality. Yeah. At Disney's virtual reality theme park that ran for about 20 years.
That was the thing that you worked on, was Disney Quest?
Yeah, we were initially, it was like a lot of research projects, kind of spinning them up, doing trials. Like we built this Aladdin's Magic Carpet thing that went into Epcot Center, and then we put a more advanced version in Disneyland, and then we put the most advanced version in Disney Quest. Then we did other attractions. We did a Hercules attraction for it. We did an interactive Pirates of the Caribbean for it. It was it was a great time. And then later that team transitioned and worked on Toontown Online, which was the first kids MMO. So I was able to. So not only was I able to take my virtual reality college work, but I was able to take my, MMO architecture college work and bring it to bear there as well.
Wow. That's amazing. So you did like graduate work at CMU before your 7 years at Disney.
Yes.
And then somehow you found your way back there.
Yeah, no, after working at Disney for 7 years, my wife and I had a daughter, and we were thinking like, okay, we both grew up in the Northeast, and like we could raise her in LA, but wow, it feels a little weird. Maybe we want to be closer to family. And so, and it was funny. It was right It was actually 9/11 is what got us thinking about it, because 9/11 happens, and then a month later, I'm supposed to be flying out to New Jersey to be best man at my friend's wedding. And the government's like, if you don't have to be on a plane, please stay out of planes. And we're like, well, we always wanted to drive across the country. Why not do it with a 10-month-old in the car? What a great idea. So we're doing the slow drive across the country, and about halfway across, my wife looks at me and says, are you thinking what I'm thinking? I said, I don't know. Are you thinking that every place that we look at in the country is looking like probably better than where we live? She's like, yeah, that's it. And so we're like, okay, what if we did move? And so we had to think about, like, because what am I going to do in the Northeast? With my strange background. And I knew a guy, Randy Pausch, who you might have known from the last lecture. I don't know if you remember that.
We actually have talked about that speech many times on the show.
Yeah, so he had done his sabbatical in our lab. One of the things I was assigned was like, hey, there's this crazy professor's coming in. He's going to be helping out with a bunch of stuff. Just keep him out of trouble, would you? And so Randy and I worked together quite a bit when he was there. And then he ended up starting the Entertainment Technology Center. We stayed in touch, and I started hiring interns from the ETC at Carnegie Mellon when I was at Disney. And I was like, these are so different than the other interns I've been getting from other colleges. Their ability to hit the ground running, join the team, and be immediately useful was not like anything I'd ever seen. So I knew they were doing something pretty special out there. So I reached out to him. I said, look, we're thinking of moving back to the Northeast. Are you interested in having somebody teach about game design or something? Because I think I could do that. And he said, oh, actually, we are. We're looking for that. And so I went through the interview process, and they were up for it. So
were they looking for somebody who could juggle, who knew networking too? And it's like AI. Yeah.
To be fair, I have taught juggling workshops as part of the Building Virtual Worlds class for many years. Yeah,
we got to go do that, Aaron. We got to have a continuing education program over there. You got something like that?
We do teach every student to juggle who goes through that program. Actually, because I don't know. I used to teach a lot of workshops. I've definitely taught thousands of people how to juggle, and I can do it. I can teach almost anybody to juggle in about an hour at this point.
What's the craziest thing you've ever juggled besides the chicken?
The craziest thing I ever juggled. Wow. I mean, I've done some dangerous things. I mean, certainly, there's the torches are a little crazy. Saw blade on a stick. That's a pretty crazy thing.
Saw blade.
Yeah, that's all right. That's a pretty crazy one. Yeah. Although I'll tell you, the most useful juggling I ever did when I was in high school, I was showing off in the cafeteria one day, and I had a couple beanbags and a cupcake, and I juggled all three of them, and I ate the cupcake.
While you're juggling? Like, are you eating it as you're juggling?
I'm eating it as I'm juggling in the cafeteria, and it gets a big round of applause. And a girl who's there sees that. She's like, I think I'm interested in that guy. And we've been married over 20 years now. So yeah. So
that's all.
So there you go. That was definitely the best juggling I ever did. I think so.
Okay.
Nice.
Yes. You heard it here, folks. The secret to a long, happy life is juggling to find your wife.
And now, a word from our sponsors. Do you want your game to live forever? To supercharge it with immense powers of endless content, a buzzing gamer community, immortality, and coin? CurseForge for Studios, an exclusive service for visionary game developers, allows you to add safe, cross-platform mods to your game and enjoy all the benefits of user-generated content without any of the risks. With CurseForge for Studios, you can harness the creativity of our 165,000 devoted creators and the traffic of 43 million monthly gamers. You can also level up with premium mods and grant your game new revenue streams. Trusted by AAA studios, CurseForge for Studios is an immortality potion for your game. Enter studios.curseforge.com and join the UGC era. Leveling up your game dev career but not sure where to start?
Maybe you're trying to break into the industry. Looking to connect with other people who are making games?
Consider joining the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA, the world's largest nonprofit member-driven professional association serving all individuals who create games.
I was in the IGDA in Chicago, met a lot of people. Great way to network.
The IGDA exists to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers,
Discounts,
educational and advocacy-based resources,
mentorship.
and solidarity across 160 plus chapters.
To join the IGDA, visit igda.org/membership and use the code IGDA 4th Curtain 15. No spaces there.
To get 15% off 1- and 2-year memberships, as well as a student membership.
Joining the IGDA is a great move for your career, and as a nonprofit supporting everyone making games, it's a great move for the whole community. Join today. All right, well, let's talk about keyboards. You know I love a good mechanical keyboard. I got a chance to go over
Hold on,
and meet the guys at High Ground.
Stop. You were going to send me
What?
one, you said. You were going to send me one. That's how the conversation started. You thought
Listen, if you want to get yourself a keyboard,
you could win one, right?
yeah, you should be following the Fourth Curtain. You should be on our Discord because we're giving away a High Ground high-performance keyboard. These things are fantastic. Go visit highground.co. Check out what they've got going on over there. In fact,
And they
they
sell
have a
out.
discount code for you. They do these drops. They sell out. They do have a section on their site for always available, and those are super cool too. Fourth Curtain 10, that's the code, get you 10% off over at High Ground. They handed it to me, this keyboard, and I almost dropped it because it's so solid.
It's so heavy. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
they're a great partner. Go head over to their website, use the discount code to get a 10% off, and we're giving one away too. So follow our Twitter at Fourth Curtain for details on how to win yourself a High Ground keyboard.
And now, back to the show.
How big is the studio now? Like, how many folks are working there?
Let's see. So the whole company is about 160 people. About 140 of them are here in Pittsburgh, and we had about 20 remote people.
That's pretty cool. So 160 folks, and you've been going for, I think it's over 20 years. Is that
Yeah,
right?
it is. It is. Yeah.
That's okay. Congratulations to you.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh, thanks.
It's got to be
Good for
kind of
you.
in the top 1-2% of longevity for an independent studio.
I'm going to give you the part I'm proudest about. 20 years, 0 layoffs.
Wow.
Wow.
That's the part
Wow.
I'm most proud about.
We have heard just how important it is to, when you're a independent studio, to be able to make that commitment to your team that this is a safe place to work. And we've heard that from Certain Affinity. We've heard that from Iron Galaxy. Both studios have been around for a long time as well. And it's
Mhm.
I find it very striking that, when you work for a big public company, people often think that this is a secure place to go. It's like if you're making a choice between going to work for like like the EAs of the world or an independent studio, often in your head, you're thinking, well, there's more stability at this bigger company. And in reality, I'm not sure that's true because those companies really are at the whim of these quarterly pressures that they have to make numbers, which are not really team-focused decisions. Whereas this is the proudest thing that you've accomplished in your career is
Yeah.
to create a stable environment for
Yeah.
people for 20 years.
Yeah, there's a big difference between stability of an organization and stability of your job.
Right.
I mean, EA is stable; it's not going anywhere, but you might be going somewhere.
Yeah, I
We
know
did.
that. Yes,
We
Aaron,
did.
Aaron and I can attest to that.
Right.
That's funny. All right. Well, so congratulations on that. But take us back to the beginning, 20 years
Yeah, that's
ago.
really cool.
20 plus years ago. So you got to Pittsburgh. Randy brought you out to CMU to start. I mean, I'm assuming you started teaching first, and then the company got started.
Well, it was actually I started the company pretty like I started. I think technically I started teaching in September and started the company in October. And the reason for that was I'm going from being like junior executive at Disney to being assistant professor who only gets paid 9 months of the year. And I'm raising a family, and I'm like, I got to make sure there's enough money coming in. So I immediately got something going just to get some consulting on the side, just so I could do some design consulting to help supplement my income a bit. And initially it was working with a lot of the folks I knew back at Disney who were like, hey, we could use your help on this and that. It was nice because I could, do a few hours of design consulting a week and kind of get that going. And I did that for about a year and a half. And some of the people I was working with kept saying, we got some development projects that we're looking for studios for, and some of them are small. If you could pull together a few people out there in Pittsburgh, we could maybe send a project your way. And the thing I realized teaching after about a year or so, I realized that it's kind of exciting. The new students come in, they don't know anything, and you start teaching them stuff, and they get better and better, and then they graduate and they're gone. And then new people come in and they make all the same mistakes and you have to start all over again. And I thought to myself, oh my God, is this what it's going to be for the next 20 years? Just me watching people make the same mistakes over and over. I don't know if I can do just that. I kept thinking how I was missing working shoulder to shoulder with people who kind of, had that level of experience. I'm like, boy, if I could do some of both, if I could be working with the students and on all that and at the same time, watching people grow, not just kind of master apprentice is fine, but geez, could we have some journeymen in there? You know what I'm saying? And so this was appealing to me. So I reached out to some people I knew who I thought, they were people who graduated from the program, things like that. And I'd say, hey, I might start this small thing. Are you interested? And got 4 or 5 people who said, yeah, I'd try that out. So I started with a small 6-month work for hire contract, and we started making the game, and it was going well and led to more contracts. And so that was initially, it was just a very work for hire based studio. We were just doing different projects and it was going well. So we just kept picking up new people and the projects got bigger and bigger and bigger. And that was it. It was very organic. After a few years, we started trying to make some of our own games, and we didn't get a lot of traction, but we kept trying it. And I would say after about 13 years, we started to get traction. And so at this point in time, we now do about 50% work for hire and 50% our own IP. The thing that really flipped it for us was when we started moving into the VR space, because we'd been doing we'd tried to do some stuff on the DS and actually even in the GBA way back in the day. But we tried doing some stuff on Steam and we got titles out and they had good reviews, but they weren't really earning. But once we started into VR, we started to get some traction. And I think partly I'd been working on VR for 20 years at that point, right? The Disney stuff and then teaching classes in it at Carnegie Mellon. So when it showed up, I'm like, I think I know how this works. And so we started doing stuff and it went well. So we've been doing more and more of that lately. But the studio is interesting because even though right now we're doing a lot of VR and AR, we shift. We don't commit to any one thing in a permanent way because the world moves on, So we always say we have sort of 4 lines of business. We have the entertainment stuff. We have a lot of focus on that right now. We do educational games, we do health games, and we also do theme park and museum projects. And being able to have all of those different options makes a lot of nice variety at the studio and lets us stay flexible. When the pandemic started, 60% of what we're doing at the park, just doing at the studio, happened to be theme park projects. And immediately all of them just stopped, no more revenue, no more work. We don't know what's going to happen next. Very scary for the studio. But because we did other things, we're like, okay, seems like health games are kind of hot right now. Let's pivot over there. and that ended up sort of filling a lot of the gap until 2 of the 3 theme park projects we're doing did come back eventually. But it's nice to be able to kind of pivot and do some of this, some of that,
So you had enough diversification that you had some options to tell me a little bit about the health games, because you and our paths crossed a little bit with that Play to Prevent project, which came out of Yale.
Right.
And I don't know if you remember at the very early part of that project, I may have suggested. I'm going to take credit for suggesting
Do
your
it.
name to Lynn,
I like it.
who was
Yeah.
running that project. Yes,
I appreciate it. I very much appreciate it. Yeah, because
He wants you to send him money, Jesse.
that's great. Yeah, no, we've had a great relationship with them.
We've had Noah Falstein on and Mike Wilson on, who both have either worked in or have been supporting health-related games. What is that like? How is it? What are those projects like, and how's it different designing for a health-related outcome as opposed to pure entertainment? Like, what's the difference there?
Yeah, so I'm actually working on a new book right now because I've done The Art of Game Design, and that has been a book that has stuck around. I'm working on a new book, The Art of Educational Game Design, with Barbara Chamberlain, and in that we're talking about both. More generally, we're talking about transformational games is the phrase we tend to use, because you always the focus, whether you're doing education or something for health, is the focus is on changing the player. And so the key always is, okay, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? What's the change I'm trying to bring to the player? And how and why is a game the right and best way to bring about this change? Because sometimes it is. Like, I'll give you an example of a health game we've worked on that's had some good success that way. There's a project called Night Shift. A professor from University of Pittsburgh Medical Center was applying for a grant and contacted us. It was an interesting story. She had done a previous project where she was looking at the problem of emergency room doctors dealing with trauma situations. Okay, emergency room doctors deal with a lot of things. Some of them are trauma situations, but not very many. And emergency room doctors have to make a tough call. When someone comes in with trauma, do we deal with it here, or do we send them to a trauma center? It's an important decision, and doctors don't get great feedback about it. Nobody gives them much feedback about, you made the right call or not the right call. They just kind of move on to other things. And so as a result, a lot of doctors don't make the best call for this. So she'd been working on a training thing to get them to understand how to make this decision better. And she made a game, but it was a very dry game. It was just a lot of practice. You would practice these decisions, and it would give you feedback, right or wrong. And she was frustrated.
Kind of like doing a word problem on the SAT. Is that?
Yeah.
You say dry. Was it?
Yeah. It was just, here's the case. What would you do? And then it would tell you right or wrong. And then you do more cases and more cases and more cases. And that reasonable idea that if you practice, you're going to get better. So she was surprised to find that 6 months later, when she tested these doctors again, they did not seem to have gotten any better. And that was frustrating. And she thought it over, and she's like, you know what? Maybe this content just isn't memorable enough. And she reasoned that if it was more emotional, maybe they'd remember better. So she brings this to us and says, how can we make this content? Because the transformation we want to make is we want people to change their habit, they want to build the skill of this. We need to change the way they're doing it. And her hypothesis was that if it was more emotional, maybe they'd remember. So we created this sort of emotional, it's almost like an adventure game where you're a young doctor who goes to this new town, but part of the reason you're moving there is because your grandfather had passed away, and you're going to have to settle his affairs, and you're sort of dealing with that while you are working at this hospital. And there's a mystery about your grandfather because he's been out of touch for like 10 years, and you don't really know why. People at the hospital know some things about it. So you're working at the hospital, like doing diagnoses and working these cases, and you meet various people who knew something about him. And so it's emotional on two levels, because you're kind of exploring this relationship with your grandfather and like what was up with his life. But then also you're getting to know these people at the hospital. Some of them are doctors, some of them are patients. And there are moments where like you make the wrong call, like somebody dies and you're faced with their crying family members who are, and so this was just a different approach. And the good part was doing the follow-up study, it really did seem to make a difference. We actually did move the needle. When the doctors came back in for the follow-up testing, it really did seem to stick with them. And we're now looking at going into a new phase of this where we've made an even improved version. And instead of just kind of testing them later, we're going to be looking at the actual Medicare claims that the doctors who've been through this training have done to see if we can show real world evidence as opposed to just training evidence.
Right. Real
That's
outcomes.
awesome.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
The key always is you got to move your head. You want to think about it being engaging, absolutely. But more than that, you got to think about what is going to bring about the change and how is the engagement going to foster the change that you need.
Very, very interesting. Very fascinating. And I think awesome that, that the craft that's kind of grown up around, interactive entertainment is being put to great use in lots of different parts of the world. I think that's great.
Yeah, no, it's such a powerful medium, and it can be used in lots of different ways that I think people don't think about.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you a question. So you have all these departments that are doing all this stuff, and this is a very specific, are y'all spread out by game in the studio? Like, are y'all moving around depending on the game, or is it just kind of like, how is it laid out? Because, it's so diverse.
It's a great question. So we use what we call a matrix management system. So everybody reports to a department. So if you're an engineer, you're in an engineering department, art department, production department, design department. So you're in that department for your oversight, for your growth, for your coaching, right? That's the idea of what the departments are for, to kind of make sure that each discipline is coached as well as it can be, so people are on great paths of growth. But so that's one dimension. Then the second dimension is the projects. Every project has a director and a producer, just like a movie, really. And there's kind of a hierarchy on a given project, because a given project might have an art director and an engineering director and a design director reporting up to the project director. So we always say everybody sort of reports to three people. You report to the director on your project when it comes to, hey, what's the work that I should be doing, and is the work excellent? You report to your producer on your project about getting it done on time, on budget, and trying to make those calls. And then you also report separately to a manager in your department who kind of gives you coaching in your discipline. So that's how we handle it. So it means that one of the advantages of being a studio doing multiple games at once, and we're typically doing between 6 and 8 games, it's a nice advantage that if a game needs some extra help, sometimes we can slide people in from another project in order to help, or slide them back. And for people who like working on a lot of different things, that's one of the great things at our studio. You can, if you want, you can kind of keep working in one vein, but some people are like, no, I want to work on a theme park thing. Now I want to work on an education game. Now I want to work on a virtual reality vampire game. The opportunity for the variety is there.
2 questions, really. One, what's a day like for you, or maybe day is too short a time scale, or a typical day or a typical week, and do you get to make stuff anymore?
Yeah, it's mostly podcasts now, really.
That's why you're so good. That microphone, it sounds like butter.
Yeah. So, right. So mostly I try and stay out of the way and let people make the games. My primary responsibility always has to be making the studio great, right? That's what I have to focus on. I've got a lot of people working here whose responsibility is make the games great. My responsibility has to be make the studio great. Now, that said, there are certain aspects of design that I know that I have some meaningful strength at. And so I try and get enough, I try and stay in touch enough that when I see one of those things where it's like, what are you guys doing over here? It should be different, that I can kind of hey, how about this? Why aren't we doing this way or that way? Occasionally there's a project where I'll lean in hard. Sometimes there'll be some detail thing where I'm like, oh, I totally get this and I see this. Would you like help? And if they say yes, then I'll say, okay, let me get in here and help a little bit with this or with that. So for me, my day is very varied. I do a lot of kind of one-on-ones with sort of directors and with sort of senior management at the company, kind of checking on this, checking on that. I do a lot of business development, trying to get new projects in here. Some amount of strategy. Oh, we should be working on this or that, or wait, here's a new idea for a game. Is this a good idea? So there's some of that, and then also some amount of just checking up on the project, looking for problems, identifying problems, helping people to solve problems. So it's sort of all over the place, but personally, I like that. I like to be able to have all that variety in my day. The challenge of it is prioritizing, like, because it can be easy to get lost in a rabbit hole of like, oh man, it's so fun working on this script for this game, but like, there's other people should be doing that. I'm going to give some notes. Hey, I think this is a good idea. You got one of the things we do, we have a whole priority system, because it can be really weird when the boss comes in and gives you this feedback. Do I have to do it? Can I tell them no? So we have this system where we try and identify all feedback as level 1, 2, or 3. Level 3 is like, I'm just giving you an opinion, do whatever you want. Level 2 is, this is a strong recommendation. It's still your call, but this is my strong recommendation. And level 1 is like, I'm sorry, I need to override what's going on here. The title cannot ship this way. So here's some level 1 feedback. We try and make that incredibly rare, but there are times you have to do it. It would be irresponsible.
Do you remember? You remember the last time you had to throw down a level 1 card?
The most common thing with level 1s, it's rare that I'll come in with a level 1 solution, and it's more common that I'll point at some problem and I'll say, solving this is level 1. If you don't come up with a solution for this, like, it can't ship. Here's some suggestions for a solution, but it just needs to be solved. There was something on the I'm blanking out. There was something on the vampire game.
There's probably things like brand, guideline or legal requirement would fit in a level 1.
Well, there's that. There are those kinds of things, but there are also times when, like, usually where the level 1 comes in the most is when the team gets really focused on, like, well, we got to hit the deadline, and so we're going to let certain things go. And sometimes they'll kind of turn a blind eye to something that is sort of important. They've all, because they're all, which I get, like, you can't do everything. But once in a while they'll be like, oh, this part's not a great players are actually confused. Like, maybe there'll be a time where, like, wow, players are confused on this part of the game. And sometimes the team's like, oh, that's just going to have to be okay. And then sometimes you got to say, that's not actually, it's not okay.
Not okay.
Well, I'm going to throw down here and say, you need to find it be a little better. It's rare, but that's we're all here to support each other, and there's.
Yeah, I think that's awesome that you actually can be involved at that level with a company that size that's doing 6 to 8 projects at once, to be as in touch with the games, to know when there's, hey, this is kind of a critical design issue that we need to get after. I think that's pretty great.
It's something I really it's something I like to be involved with when I can, because it's I don't know. I like making games, and the fact that I've been making them for 30 years sometimes means I can have a quick insight that can be helpful.
How do you balance the company with? I mean, are you teaching? Like, do you have a course load, or like, how do you balance the professorship with the entrepreneurship?
In the old days, I was doing 2 full-time jobs at once, and it was a lot. And eventually, I had to kind of, okay, wait a minute, let's cool this down. And at this point right now, with the size that the company is, what I do now, my commitment at the university is like 5 or 6 hours a week. What I do is I basically spend all day Friday over there working with students, kind of one-on-one. I do some guest lectures and things, but most of it is working with project teams, kind of giving some advice, consultation, also career advice, sort of helping people find their way into careers. I miss teaching full courses, but it's between preparing the lectures, grading the assignments, and all that. It's just a lot. It was a little too much.
That is a lot.
I may go back and try some of it at some point, but right now, right now, this is feeling like a good balance. It's great to be able to help out a bit over there, get to know the students, and also see, because that's one of the great things at the school. Like the ETC is always focused on next generation stuff because the students can take risks we wouldn't take here in industry. So they're diving in on all kinds of AI projects and stuff that industry is not quite ready for, and you get to see all these really brave things that everybody's trying out. Because many times I've seen projects there that are like, whoa, this is really revolutionary. One day this will be possible. I've been there long enough. Like I remember, man, 2002, someone was like, hey, check it out. If you could track your whole body real time, you could make this really great dance game. And they're using 20 cameras and this $50,000 system in order to do all that. And we're like, wow, that is really cool. That's not going to be possible for like 10 years. And what do you know? 10 years later, Dance Central comes out on Connect. And it was like, yeah, that was it. Like that. Yep. That. And so it's fun to be able to kind of get that glimpse of the future.
Yeah, that is very cool. I get asked a lot about from folks like who are thinking about how to get started in the industry or college, or friends who have kids that are trying to coach their kids on a path into the future. And CMU was always in the mix of ideas that I have for folks that are thinking about how to explore interactive entertainment and things like that. So it's got a fantastic reputation. One more question that I have, because I taught over at Art Center. It's an art college, programming to artists for a few years. And one of the things that I really enjoyed was watching the trajectory of some of my students as they went out. Either, I had a few that interned at my studio or have gone out into the industry, et cetera. And I imagine over as many years as you've been involved in the program, you've probably had many, many students go on to do notable things or be part of your team as well. Are there any particular stories of careers that you've helped launch that you'd want to share?
There have been so many. I mean, it was wonderful at the just got back from GDC and going to the alumni gathering that was there, and you just see these people with these phenomenal careers who've started companies or just been central in really important games, and that's thrilling to see. I think some of the most memorable ones. If you remember the game World of Goo,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So that started out as a student project. So that was Kyle Gabler and Kyle Gray and some others did this project all about what they were trying to figure out, what is the best way to build game prototypes as fast as possible. And one of the games that came out of that was World of Goo. It was built in a few days. It was initially called Tower of Goo. And it was exciting to see to Kyle take that out and go away for a year with some other folks and actually turn that into a really successful game, and then build a number of other successful games after that. The other one I think about, of course, is Neil Druckmann, who was directed Last of Us, and that again sort of started as a student project here.
Wow.
I know, it was weird. So Pittsburgh is big on zombies. The Night of the Living Dead was made here, and the folks who'd made Night of the Living Dead had come to the ETC and said, hey, can you help us? We're trying to figure out how to we've made some video games for it, but they've just been kind of shooters. We're looking to do something that's a little different. And so they'd sponsored a project, they wanted students to explore what else could you do with this. And Neil and a number of other students really pushed, how could we make kind of a zombie game that had a lot of story and drama in it? And the project, they tried to do way too much, and it kind of collapsed under its own weight. But there was this glimmer of there's something here. And Neil, I remember Neil sitting in my office. I asked him, where do you think you want to, when you when you work, where do you think you want to work? He's like, well, I'm interested in different things, but there's this company, Naughty Dog, and I don't know if I could get in there. I'm like, Neil, we could reach out. Maybe we can help you make a connection. And they took him on as an intern. They loved him as an intern. And then he started there full time. And, he'd worked on a few things there. When they were getting something new, he made this pitch for Last of Us based on, the things he remembered. He's like, oh, like, you always got to do it wrong before you can do it right. And he remembered like, oh, I think I see how to do this right now. And it was wonderful just watching his career and trajectory.
That's awesome.
With those titles. He went, worked on Uncharted and then worked on the Last of Us titles.
That's an awesome story. All of the impact that, I don't know how many people know how impactful this program, your studio and your involvement in both have been on entertainment and games. But thank you for all of it. Very impressive.
Making games is super fun. And part of the reason that I have stayed involved with the ETC is it was clear to me that place, it was serving as the launching point for the future leaders of the industry. And realizing that like, oh, if we can help them do this well, wisely, and ethically and responsibly, it could make a real difference in the world. And so it's been wonderful to kind of, be a part of that over the years, because, games are really powerful and making them is hard. So, we all have to support and help each other.
Right on.
Hey, so I have a question for you. Earlier, you mentioned that you get these little glimpses every once in a while. What are you seeing now?
Oh, in terms of stuff that's coming. Oh,
yeah, that's like 10 years out. Like, what are you thinking? If you had to make in
the year 2034, if you're going to look back and be like, wow, how did games change over the last 10 years? The big thing is going to be AI. We are going to look back and we're going to be like, wow, can you, wow, games before AI, that was so different. That's going to be the biggest one. The presence of intelligent characters in games is going to radically change the nature of games. The way I often think of it is games up till now, games are about action, about doing things, about verbs. Most of the verbs are below the neck verbs. I'm running, I'm jumping, I'm punching, I'm kicking, whatever. Talking, you're kind of hitting a button in a kind of fake way is how it is. Suddenly, we're going to have this world where talking matters, right? You're going to have characters that need to be persuaded, characters that have emotion, characters that remember. It's games are going to move more into a realm that's, games are often trying to be like movies, but they're never quite like movies because you just can't do the level of conversation and intimacy and emotional interaction. That's suddenly going to be here. Talking about predictions, there's a professor, Chris Swain from USC. I remember he said this thing like 15 years ago, and it's always stuck with me because I think he's absolutely right. He talked about how when silent films came out, people didn't really take them seriously. They were kind of silly, goofy, kind of a niche thing, kind of for kids, kind of for people who weren't very intelligent. It wasn't considered a form of any kind of high culture, anything important. It was considered just popular culture, disposable, unimportant. Which, of course, nowadays we've lost 90% of those silent films because that was the attitude. But then as soon as they learned to talk, everything changed. And the phrase he used was that film became the literature of the 20th century, became the dominant medium that changed everything. And his argument is games right now are in that same place. They're an important part of popular culture, but they're not considered high culture. They're not really considered important, transformative. They're just considered kind of fluff for kids, for people who aren't very smart. And his suggestion is, yep, games already know how to talk. That's not the problem. Games haven't learned to listen. And his argument is that as soon as games learn to listen, everything changes and games become the most important medium of the 21st century. And I think that's true because I think we are going to be moving to a situation where if you want a meaningfully powerful, transformative emotional experience, one where you have characters who actually can think, remember, and emote. Like it's a whole new medium. So that's I think the biggest change that's coming at us. There's a lot of stuff happening with VR and mixed reality that I think is going to fit in really well with that, honestly. Um, I was at GDC, I was talking about, I believe we have a new medium coming very soon, which I call in-home adaptive storytelling, right? Because you're going to have these headsets. You look at the Vision Pro, you look at the Quest 3, these things are going to know the inside of your house. You're going to teach it, here's my rooms, here's my hallways, here's my kitchen, here's where everything is. They're going to parse the furniture. They're going to understand what your house is, right? So imagine a game, you put on the headset, the doorbell rings, and you go to your real door, open the real door, virtual character standing outside. And they say, hey, I got some groceries. This is important. Here, follow me. They know where your kitchen is. They walk into your kitchen, put the groceries on the counter, start unpacking them. Help me cook this stuff. So now you're in there in your own kitchen, working with these virtual groceries, getting this stuff ready. He's putting stuff in the real oven, starting at cooking. He says, look, we need to make these things because up in your attic, there are some creatures and we're going to have to deal with it. So we're going to need these baits. And I brought these weapons. You and I are going up there. We're going to go up there and we're going to fight those things. And you'll be able to have these dramas and these adventures like that to use your house as the stage and platform. And that stuff's going to be happening easily within 5 years. So there's a lot of fun and exciting stuff coming our way. But I would say I think the mixed reality and the AI are really going to change games over the next decade.
Awesome.
That sounds like a very plausible and pretty cool future. All right, Jesse, thanks for hanging out with us. We kept you way over an hour. Some amazing stuff. I think it's going to be hard for us to pick a good soundbite because there's like 15 of them.
There's like at least 30. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me. It was super fun.
Congrats and everything. 20 years, no layoffs. I know you're very proud of that. We're very proud of you for that too. Thank you for doing what you do, and we'll see you around.
See you, Jesse.
All right, thanks.
Wow, Jesse is like one of the most interesting cats ever, don't you think? Like that whole story, bonkers.
Which one? There was like 20 good ones. The magician that like with the joke. The thing is, I could see it. Like I could see that happening. You know.
I told Laura the story about the 2 eggs and the chicken and not being able to juggle because he didn't know which came first. Very clever. It was very clever.
Very good.
The most memorable part of that conversation for me was like the first time I've had somebody articulate to me a really fascinating use case for AI that will make a game experience better, not replace part of the existing tool chain like generative AI,
which is already happening.
Like this idea he was talking about where it's like, hey, instead of like the way we make NPCs today, where we kind of, we write a conversation engine or a dialogue tree or something like that, we let an NPC build its own information graph using AI, and its ML data that it's extending its initial state with is all the players in this world. So just imagining the innkeeper in the village who has talked to pretty much everybody in the entire game, knows everybody playing the game, and can tell stories to players based on shit that happened and has its own memory. That kind of expanded my mind a little bit. That's how I heard that. I don't know if you heard it the same way, but
oh yeah, like we've seen examples of that stuff too, right? Like that one NPC that was hooked up to ChatGPT, or there's like one demo you can get.
Yeah, that seemed. I mean, I guess, but it didn't have the same impact as just listening to Jesse talk about it.
Yeah, he's like he reminds me a lot of that one space aero scientist guy, Tacoma. I can't remember his name. He's on a lot of podcasts.
Oh. No, I don't know.
Well, that guy also has a really cool way of explaining like futuristic ideas and really bringing them down to like nuggets that are understandable. And then your brain can like visualize it and like kind of run with it. But yeah, you know what I was thinking is it's going to be interesting when these like, what if these NPCs are like, or that world is like, it breaks the fourth wall, like where they start to like go in and out of the lore. Like you have this innkeeper that's in the world, right? But what if that innkeeper can now like it's an NPC that's like a cast that goes, you know how like some movies have like the same actors because they're like all friends with the director. So you see these movies that like, it's always got the same like 12 people or whatever. Like, what if the game AI starts to be like that? Like it starts to like, you know what I mean? And like you start to
So,
see.
so it's on the back end, it's like it can go beyond the game that it's in,
Yeah.
and know shit about the world. And
Yeah.
other
And then you
games.
could like friend one and like ask for it to like have a baby.
You're describing the metaverse.
Yeah. And then that little baby can go into your house robot because you love
What?
the AI. Yeah. Your house robot.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Like what if you really like the personality of the innkeeper? You're like, man, the innkeeper's hilarious. Man, I wish I could hang out with the innkeeper. And you're like, you download like now in the AI store, you could buy the innkeeper from the Traveler's Tales Dungeon Keeper game or whatever.
Oh, and
then
to be your Alexa.
Yeah,
in
and
your
you're like,
house.
hey, innkeeper, you're the best. Thank you.
Okay.
You know?
And then
it
what?
kills you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Is that gonna happen? Do you think the Matrix is there is this like really practical, you know how everybody thought we were gonna have flying cars by now? They used to have like the
Yeah.
futuristic. Do you think we're being that way with AI now? Because it's kind of like anything you could think of, you know? Or do you think there's gonna be like this thing where it does get regulated, or very few people have it, or it isn't as awesome as we all think it's going to be? Do you know what I mean?
I don't know. It's a good question. I'll tell you one thing. It's like back before the internet, the future tellers did not describe a world where the most significant advancement was this this infrastructure of connected computers that allowed us to rapidly share data, right? But the creation of that network has had a fundamental and global impact on how we communicate with each other, it's been just hugely significant. And the results of that are weird, like if who would have thought that the creation of that network there, where at the beginning we were just downloading one GIF a day because that's what we could do, would basically replace broadcast television. It would basically
Print media.
Print media, physical distribution of media. Like we'd be scrolling, we'd be way more connected with friends and family, but it would be in this micro form, whatever, So I think AI probably will be the same kind of thing, where the impact it will have will be far-reaching and global, but it's really hard to predict what kind of behavioral changes, people it will impart upon people in society until we get there. And if we learn anything from where the internet and social media went, it is sort of this notion that when commerce dictates the direction of technology, it usually benefits the commercial purveyors more than it benefits the consumers. That might be a little cynical. I mean, I think we're all very happy that we have unlimited entertainment instantly. But we also have other things, It's like that taxi. It's like, I don't need it. I don't need it. Some people want it, I guess, but I think Waymo wants it more than I do because they're going to get rich off of it. And will the same thing happen with AI?
I don't know what to say to that, because it's weird that this is the first time. Yeah, because I actually kind of want self-driving cars, but I'm terrified of AI because it is going to be.
Yeah. So will the AI come into your house and kill you? I don't think so, but it'll probably get you to buy that WarioWare hat. Do you really need it?
Well, I mean, it's on its way.
Then they've already won.
They've already won.
Just give in. It's okay. It's okay. We'll all be well fed and entertained.
Wait, one more thing. I have a correction. It's not Cleveland spaghetti. It's Cincinnati spaghetti, and it's delicious. Chef's kiss. Mwah.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us again this week. Hope you enjoyed the conversation with Jesse. He's a superstar in my mind.
Yeah.
And we'll
really cool.
See you next time.
See ya. Thank you for listening to the Fourth Curtain Podcast. The Fourth Curtain is a production of Fourth Curtain Media with community management by Doug Zartman. Lovingly edited and mastered by Brian Hensley at Noise Floor Sound Solutions in Chicago. To get a peek at upcoming episodes or to send in questions to the show, visit our site at thefourthcurtain.com. And be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for listening.